So, anyway, listen, this morning's panel discussion I thought was just really inspirational. There were a couple of things in there. It's a little bit sibilant, this microphone, isn't it? Is it? Is it annoying anybody? It's okay. Good. Okay, well, there you go. We heard that collaboration is tremendously rewarding, but is also quite difficult to achieve from one of our speakers this morning. And I agree with that, actually, and that's what I'm going to talk about. No, that's not quite right. I think collaboration is quite easy to achieve if you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that's really the subject of my talk. One of the speakers said, what value do you get out of collaborating? Well, that is very much goes to the core of it. And I'm going to suggest that you might get things out of collaboration which are not the immediate, obvious things. And that's part of the talk. But I really was taken with the idea that collaboration, if nothing else, there is an intrinsic, very good reason for working with other people, which is to try new things, get out of your comfort zone, do things that you're not familiar with, because that is inherently stimulating and will spur you on and inspire you to new ideas and new creative possibilities. And I think if for no other reason, if you go away from today, that is why you should be doing this very thing. So, anyway, I'm going to put the timer on because I am a chatterbox, so I can talk for a long time without taking breath. But anyway, the title of the speech, what have these animals all got in common? I'm going to show you some pictures. Can you see that? Yeah. Do you know what it is? A bat. What sort of bat? A vampire bat, thank you. What about this? Red squirrel, cute. You have red squirrels in Northern Ireland still, don't you? Yeah, you do. How about this? Anybody had this procedure? No, you're not admitting it, are you? I haven't. I don't fancy it, actually. It's not meant to be very hygienic. Do you know what these are? These are cleaner fish. And how about this? What's this fella? It's actually a human being is the answer I'm looking for. It's a Florida scrub jay. Now, what do they all have in common? They cooperate. They are collaborators. Vampire bats regurgitate blood to others despite the possibility of dying if 3 days elapse without their consuming blood. Squirrels give alarm calls even though they alert predators to their own presence and put themselves in danger. Cleaner fish enter the mouths of their hosts, sharks for example, and remove parasites even at the risk of being eaten. And Florida scrub jays are possibly the most interesting of these. They often stay at home with their own parents for long periods of time, foregoing the benefits of personal reproduction to help rear their younger siblings. You see, in nature, cooperation is hardwired into animals' brains, including ours. And it's a natural part of our behaviour, and it's something that comes easily and naturally to us. And it's a vital part of our ability to survive. So as a species, as individuals, and as members of organisations and groups, our brains instinctively push us, drive us to work towards common goals. And that's really what I want you to take away from this. Now, there are political ideologists who are drawn to the idea of survival of the fittest. And that's Mr. Charles Darwin, who is often attributed with the idea. He didn't actually come up with the phrase. In that philosophy, life is essentially a struggle to outperform your neighbours. Survival and success depends on your being stronger than your competitors. Interested in the question earlier about competition and the effect that that has on collaboration competition. So, it's dog eat dog out there, fight to the death, metaphorically, sometimes literally. So in the popular imagination, Darwinism has been taken to involve weeding out the weak and favouring the strong, which is something that strengthens the ability of the entire species to survive. Now, The most unpleasant aspects of biological determinism might have been jettisoned after the war for obvious reasons, but it's fair to say that social Darwinism has been a close friend and driving intellectual force of free market capitalism since the war. The business world is still enthralled to the idea of survival of the fittest, at least in its crudest form. I take an interest in these matters because I was actually elected a while back to the democratically elected management structure of the Co-op Group, which I know is a very big entity in Northern Ireland as well as in my part of the world, in England. This is Paul Flowers, the disgraced ex-chief executive of the Co-op Bank. And what glee the right-wing press reported on the so-called Crystal Methodist. It was a good gag, actually. But the free market ideologues would be delighted if the Co-op Bank and its retail operations came crashing to the ground. You see, free marketeers and economic liberals and so on are deeply opposed to the idea of cooperation as a business model. The idea that people might work profitably together, not just for mutual benefit, but because it's ethical to do so and that it's good to do so in order to build a better world. And that idea is challenging to the status quo in which we live. What I'm here to say is that looking out for your neighbours, for the weaker members in society, helping each other, working towards a common wealth, and indulging in collective, mutually beneficial behaviour is not a left-wing aberration or some kind of namby-pamby feel-good thing. It's actually an intrinsic part of our makeup. When we collaborate, we're being true to ourselves. Even so, some people don't get cooperation. They do macho, heroic, individualistic stuff all by themselves, and there are quite a few of them about. There may be some even in this room. Maybe I'm one standing up here, actually. So there you go. However, they're not all men, by the way. Has anybody seen The Devil Wears Prada? Great film. Meryl Streep is one of those macho adventurers in that sense. And in business, it's been well documented that the people who rise to become the captains of industry, they show an alarming propensity to narcissistic and psychopathic personality disorders. And if you're interested in that, read Adrian Furnham. He's a very good psychologist. He writes in the Sunday Times, amongst other things. Google him. But I've worked in the arts long enough to recognise that we have quite a few of these kinds of people running our major companies. There's lots of great people, but naturally there are a few there who tend to spoil things a little bit. That's another story. Let's go back to the survival of the fittest for a moment. What biologists observe is that while there is direct competition between individuals and species and populations, this competition is not the driving force of evolution. In fact, successful species and individuals are opportunistic. They prosper by expanding into empty ecological niches. They seek out gaps where competition is least intense. The phrase should say something like survival of the cleverest. It's not our strength, but our wits that help us to flourish. Amphibians and reptiles, mammals, the whole gamut are not at war with each other. Species, including human beings, live well by adapting themselves to ecosystems. Our friend earlier was talking about a changing ecosystem. Economics is a type of ecosystem. We have to adapt to that or we don't survive. Ecosystems are communities of living organisms that interact with each other and their environments, and they're delicately balanced and have evolved beautifully and elegantly over long periods. There's a poetry in nature, a sense of harmony, I believe, of slow, orderly progression, like a beautiful, slow movement in a symphony. Maybe it's fanciful, but I sometimes wonder whether we respond with awe and wonder to wide-open views over beautiful landscapes, over this wonderful Belfast Loch here, for example, and we see shoals of wonderful, brightly coloured fish, or flocks of starlings in the sky. And it moves us precisely because we're reminded of our place in the bigger picture, that we ourselves are part of that great ecosystem called Earth, which is itself part of the universe. And that we're not individuals, but we're part of a grander design. So this is the blue marble, the famous blue marble, and this view prompted some of those hard-bitten Apollo astronauts and their ex-fighter pilots, tough guys, to intense spiritual awakenings. I don't believe that we're machines. Some economists and the economic model tends to think of us as very rational and very machine-like in the way that we do things. I don't think that. I'm coming, by the way, from a psychological perspective. I am a psychologist. We're not pre-programmed to conform to instrumental theories of supply and demand and market forces. I think there is something infinitely more worthy and noble about us as a species. The decisive factor is not superiority over one another in competition, but the ability to survive dramatic changes in environmental conditions. We've just been through one. This is the catastrophic meteor impact of 66 million years ago. The main land-dwelling animals didn't survive this impact, but those that did were those that lived in underground tunnels. And you know which they were? The humble mice. And they're our ancestors. And they're highly social creatures too. And they were resilient because they were adaptable and could survive collectively. So the mighty strong dinosaurs, who were not so clever or not so social, were wiped out in no time at all. Animals are stronger when they act together. Now, I've been dying to do this for years, I have to say to you. This is an anarchist flag, and you don't see one of these very often at an arts marketing conference. So I'm delighted to be able to unfurl this anarchist flag to you. Here's Peter Kropotkin. He's one of the theorists. I'm sure some of you know him. Sociologist, anarchist from Russia. And he viewed the concept of survival of the fittest as supporting cooperation, not competition. And the fittest people are not those who are good at competing individually, but rather the ones who are best at working together. And he surmised that the idea of mutual aid is one of the cornerstones of anarchism, by the way. It's also one of the driving forces of evolution. And it's the origin of our ethical and altruistic tendencies. And of course, this theory was rubbished over the next 50 years by most politicians and many social scientists. But it's interesting, isn't it? Social psychology begins to start shedding new insights on these ideas and has begun to offer some compelling evidence that cooperation is indeed at the basis of our motivations, the things that drive us. Now meet Joe Henrich. Now he's an anthropologist and psychologist at the University of British Columbia. In 2005, he, along with colleagues, published results of a major study into social behaviour. Here's the front page. Academic journals, don't you love them? Researchers travelled to 15 small-scale societies around the world, and they exhibited a wide range of economic and cultural situations. And they went to the rainforests and the savannas and the mountain communities in the Andes and to Africa and to Asia, and it was a huge cross-section of humanity. What Henrich was trying to find out was whether human beings are motivated primarily by self-interest or whether they are driven by more complex social motives. Do short-term individual rewards make us work harder or be more creative? So it's the received wisdom in our Western societies that selection favours that behaviour that maximises personal gains. Success in life is an essentially individualistic struggle. Our ideal is the self-made man. What Joe Henrich sought to find out was whether older, unindustrialised societies that have not been subject to modern Western philosophy and drenched in liberal economics for the last 250 years actually work like that. And no, they don't, at least if you accept his evidence. What we see are groups of people who value fairness and behaviour which contributes to the common good. People in these societies play by the rules, and those that cheat for their own personal gains are punished. More than this, human society shows a strong tendency to share at the expense of self-interest. The research documented instances of hunters returning from expeditions and leaving their bounty, the killed prey, at the edge of the village. Here it would be collected anonymously, butchered, cooked, and shared among the whole community, not just the fittest and the strongest. Those hunters were not glory hunters, so much for every man for himself. Of course, some of the behaviours that they observed provided mutual benefits. If I do something that helps you, I might expect that you will repay that favour back to me. Psychologists call it trading behaviours or reciprocity. Now, at a psychological level, reciprocity is an immensely strong driver of behaviour. And well, let's go on. So much so that you may feel well obligated to repay a favour, even if you didn't ask for that favour in the first place. And this was demonstrated in a famous experiment by Dennis Regan in 1971. Regan told his research subjects that they were participating in an art experiment with a partner who was actually Regan's confederate. During the experiment, Regan's assistant would disappear for a 2-minute break and bring back a soft drink for their research subject. And after the art experiment was finished, the assistant casually asked the subject of the experiment to buy raffle tickets from him. So in the control group, the assistant behaved in exactly the same manner, but did not buy the subject a drink. So in the first condition, the research subject received a small favour. In the second condition, the subject received no favour. What happened? Those who had received the favour, a soft drink, only a can of Coke, bought more raffle tickets than those in the control group, despite the fact that they hadn't asked for the drink in the first place. Furthermore, the cost of the tickets they bought was way more than the cost of the soft drink that they were given. We might not be aware of it, but there is strong social pressure to repay generous acts, even from strangers, whether we like them or not. Do we conclude, therefore, that it is not social motivations that drives us, but an instinctive sense of what's in it for me? Kindness and compassion. Might these qualities be simply motivated by an expectation that they will be returned, probably more generously than was warranted? Is reciprocal behaviour little more than a clever, covert strategy to promote self-interest? Perhaps there is an element of this, but let's examine altruism as distinct from reciprocity. I love this NIMBY picture, I have to say. Have you seen it? Who says say no to a secondary school in their village? You know, anyway, that's just me. I find it incredible. Let's just say that altruism is a set of behaviours that appear to benefit others, but not the person who performs them. You help someone else, but get nothing, nor expect nothing in return. You share, but at your own expense. Altruism is not motivated by any sense of self-interest, nor any expectation of reciprocal reward in the future. Does it widely exist? Does altruism exist? Put your hands up if you think that altruism is widespread. Yeah, so, you know, half and half, half and half. Okay. Okay. This is an electric shock machine. I'm going to tell you about another famous psychological experiment involving electric shocks, but not the one you're thinking about, by the way. It's the dread of electric shocks that we're interested in here. So in 1968, Lerner and Lichtman set up this experiment in which subjects were told they would choose in which condition of the experiment they would participate. Paired with another subject, whom they did not know, they had to choose between receiving electric shocks or administering them to their partner. You're asked whether it is you to be shocked or your partner. Which do you choose? Now then, hands up again. Hands up those people who would elect to take the shock, thereby sparing the other person that ordeal. Ooh, wow. Fantastic. What a gorgeous bunch of people you are. Well, there you are. Left to themselves, in Lerner and Lichtman's experiment, 9% of subjects chose to receive the shocks. Only 9%. Which isn't bad, and I think you're extraordinary, the fact that you've chosen that. Anyway, there you go. When people were told that their unknown partner had requested them to take the shocks, as that person was really scared, you know what? 72% of subjects agreed to take the shock. The proportion was even higher when they were told the other person had been given first choice, but had decided to let you decide. In this condition, 88% chose to take the shocks for themselves. Therefore, we conclude self-interest isn't the only factor influencing people's behaviour. Although most people made the selfish decision when they had no other information, this research showed that the majority of people will act unselfishly with little incentive. And it really does seem that many of us have an innate feeling of personal responsibility towards the welfare of others. How else could you explain that £10 billion is donated to charity in the UK alone every year? Nor is it rich people who give predominantly. Those in less prosperous circumstances donate a higher proportion of their wealth, presumably at greater cost. Over half of the adult UK population donates an average £10 per month to charity. Perhaps Britain really is a generous and compassionate society. Did you know that being kind is good for you? And it's an area, as Margaret alluded to, I'm interested in, called positive psychology. And there are so many studies which say the same thing, that being generous, trusting, optimistic, seeing the good in people is ultimately the key to personal well-being. And I think that's what Mr. Cameron was talking about, and his well-being agenda comes straight out of the positive psychology theoretical framework. A very rapid route to depression and anxiety is to feel cynical, watchful, pessimistic, and misanthropic. And those negative emotions feed into a cycle of low self-esteem, low expectation, and feelings of isolation and vulnerability. A positive mindset and positive behaviour is at the heart of a happy life. Human beings are not just out for themselves, but how does this help our understanding of collaboration? The unconscious impulse to work together is actually the natural order, which is much stronger than our competitive instincts. Think about this. When you're feeling frustrated in a team exercise or a collaborative initiative, think about, or shortchanged, think about these things. The practical reciprocal benefits of simply being kind and generous. You'll probably get more than you give out in return, number one. Number two, the positive psychological benefits of acting in the common interest. Very personally fortifying, and you will increase your well-being, your creativity, and your, ultimately, the happiness in your life, and you'll live a longer life and have less disease. And finally, I'm simplifying this. There is evidence for it, I promise you. Think about what is the common interest and where you might fit into that. So, what makes a great collaboration? At the heart of any cooperative endeavour lie good personal relationships. And Andrew, who was sitting here, I don't know his second name, stole my line. I thought it was a good one, but he got there first. It's not organisations that cooperate, but the people within them. I promise you, I did write that earlier. And good relationships are founded on trust, just exactly as he said. And by the way, can I commend to you, this is a fantastic piece of work. Has everybody got hold of a copy of this? Read it, it's great, it's really good. I'm talking generalities, they're talking specifics. It's really good. Trust. Always work with people you trust. Let's look at some fantastic examples of people working together. I want you to ponder the role of trust in these collaborations. This is the United Nations. This is kind of quite gut-wrenching what's happening in Ukraine and Syria and so on. I think our best hope is the United Nations, but that's another story. UN was formed on the 24th of October 1945 to promote international cooperation, following World War II to prevent another conflict. Not everyone joined the UN when it was formed. They were suspicious of it, particularly some of the big powers. But over the years, most countries have come on board. The UN is concerned with the noblest of aspirations: peacekeeping and security, human rights, economic development, humanitarian assistance, and other world issues like disease eradication, environmental protection and decolonisation, democracy. Not everyone likes the UN. It's been accused of bias and corruption and ineffectiveness over the years. But most people, despite its flaws and failings, would agree this is a collaboration that expresses the best in our humanity, at least in its aspirations. People look to the UN when things are going wrong. Here's another fantastic collaboration. They're not in it for the money. Now, this is CERN. They've got the big particle accelerator in Lucerne in Switzerland, and they've just found the Higgs boson particle, which I don't really understand it, but apparently it is the secret to the universe. It's great. And CERN's mission is simple. What is the universe made of? How did it start? And physicists at CERN, this is what they say, are seeking answers using some of the world's most powerful particle accelerators. If you want a mission statement, go to CERN and take a leaf out of their book. That's just great. And here's Cancer Research Campaign, which is a worldwide collaborative effort. Yeah, the pharmaceutical companies are make money out of it, sure, but this is all scientists, all medical scientists are working towards this point completely selflessly and sharing their knowledge and their market research and all their findings in this common cause. So I'm going to ask you this question, and then maybe you can give me the answer at the end of it. What do they all have in common? So let's bring this right back to our own backyard. Audiences Northern Ireland was launched just as the collaborative audience development agencies in the rest of the UK were beginning to show signs of, I wrote stress, and then I realised I should write distress, actually. And just as ANI was getting into its stride, many of those agencies were shedding their consortium activities and converting to free market business units, delivering projects and services for individual clients and small ad hoc groupings. Now, I had a hand in setting up a few of those agencies in the 1990s. Birmingham Arts Marketing and Arts Marketing Warwickshire were two. And it was something of a kind of cottage industry, actually, of mine, to go and do consultancies around these cooperative arts marketing ventures. Everyone paid in a fee, which was equitably calculated on the basis of their size and financial turnover. And everyone was nominally of equal standing in the hierarchy. And the understanding was that everyone had something valuable to offer. The small community-based groups were in touch with people at the grassroots, while the big, rich institutions had financial and political clout and marketing expertise, which could be used to raise profile and create an impact in the public imagination. And they could also improve the hard business skills of the smaller groups. And it was a win-win deal. The funders thought it was wonderful, of course. All the children were playing nicely at audience development, recognising and contributing to the common cause, sharing knowledge and contacts, intelligence, playing to their strengths, working together to widen access to the arts. And I see now, in hindsight, that the motive for these arts marketing cooperatives was very much rooted in the idea of mutual benefit and reciprocal advantage. The players came together because they thought they could get something good out of it. Access to audiences and new markets, access to expertise and contacts, to new money, funding and other resources, political brownie points too. These cooperative relationships were essentially founded on the expectation of obtaining rewards for the participants. Do you remember that experiment where this person brings in the soft drink as a favour and then sells the raffle tickets? Well, that's kind of what we were doing, actually, trading favours. So in that haze of warm philanthropy, everyone was doing everyone else a favour in the expectation that their generosity would be paid back in future, and with interest. People's considerable investment of time in meetings, of allowing access to mailing lists, sharing marketing intelligence and the tricks of the trade, hard cash, it was freely traded as a cost-benefit exercise. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not inherently unethical or unsound to participate in a reciprocal arrangement. But here's the thing. Here's what I learned. It's not a strong basis for an enduring, resilient relationship. When the expected rewards fail to materialise in the volume or the timescale or the shape that you expected in the first place, then the basis of that cooperation will be damaged or even destroyed. And at the first sign of trouble, everything falls apart. And so it did. Now, I live in Ledbury in Herefordshire, and the biggest news, the biggest thing to happen in Ledbury in the last millennium is that Liz Hurley came to live in a big mansion 3 miles outside of town. So I take an interest in the marital comings and goings of Liz Hurley and Shane Warne. And the marriage apparently isn't doing great, but that's celebrity gossip. Don't quote me on that. But in the collaborative agency that I ran, Arts Marketing Warwickshire, here's what happened. We had staff changes. The original founders who had invested their own reputations and had an emotional stake in the enterprise were no longer sitting around the table. There were new voices and strong personalities, difficult personalities. They began to question what they were getting out of the collaboration. And of course, this begged the question of what they were putting in, apart from a few £1,000 per year. There was an increasing mismatch of expectations, an emphasis on hard measurable benefits that failed to materialise. Changing personalities, a lack of real commitment and emotional investment, and despite its idealistic beginnings, there was never really any sense of fit, of genuine, authentic common purpose. There was a creeping lack of trust, and I regret that. And like the celebrity marriage, the relationship was founded on, I don't know, maybe a mix of public relations and superficial attraction, on a desire for mutual enrichment. And with the first argument, once that initial fascination had begun to wane, the relationship was doomed. And there were arguments, and people started being unfaithful and going off to other agencies and so on, and secrets and petty jealousies, and you know the deal when a relationship goes bad. So Arts Marketing Warwickshire, and it transmogrified, well, it turned into something else, but Arts Marketing Warwickshire, for want of a shorthand, like every other single of the English arts marketing cooperatives, converted to a free enterprise agency, ditched the consortium objects and concentrated on delivering services. And so in England, at the high watermark of the audience development boom, consortium boom, there were upwards of 16 agencies delivering collaborative activity. Now they're all gone, except for one called the Audience Agency, which has a joint base in London and Manchester, but operates on more or less private sector principles and earns money from consultancy and receives a rapidly declining proportion of its finance from public funding or investment. One by one, the collaborative agencies dissolved. Some of them, like Birmingham Arts Marketing, ballooned in size, like those dying stars astronomers call red giants, and end up in a final celestial display of fireworks blowing themselves to pieces. And that happened 2 years ago, finally, with the so-called bonfire of the agencies, when the Arts Council of England called time and pulled the plug on all of them. So, actually, you, in Audiences Northern Ireland, I'm not denying what I said in the first place. You stand at in a very special place, actually, in the UK, and I think in the Republic of Ireland as well, in that you are a collaborative, cooperative audience development agency. I don't want you to go the same way that the English agencies went. So that's really what this is about. I don't think we had properly negotiated and agreed the basis of the collaboration. We had not genuinely explored why people were participating in them, what their expectations were, nor had we understood how we could motivate players to stay in the game. These are your challenges. Reciprocity is a short-term arrangement that is good to get you over a problem or to seize an opportunity. But for cooperation and collaborations, just like marriages, to endure in the long term, something stronger is needed to bind them together, to push them forward through good times and bad. In marriages and relationships, being successful at work, learning a musical instrument, giving up fags or losing weight, what's the secret of success? In just one word, it's motivation. And can I get it to do that? Yes. The impulse to act, the desire to succeed. Now, motivation is actually simple, but psychologists and every other management guru have spent the last 50 years or longer trying to unlock what it is. So many of us feel demotivated and crushed by our circumstances. So what's going wrong? Now, let me tell you how you can build motivation. Have clear goals. As Stephen Covey said, wonderful book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, always begin with the end in mind. Have clear roles. Know where you fit in the bigger picture and concentrate on that. Do what you're good at. Psychologists call this self-efficacy. Keep in control of your life. Make your own decisions as far as you can. This is called locus of control. Have positive relationships. And how to destroy motivation. It's quite simple. 2 fiendishly effective ways that psychology has taught us that you can switch off motivation. Rig the system so that the decisions are made unfairly or opaquely. If you want to switch off people's social impulses, their willingness to cooperate and collaborate for the common good, here's the thing to do. Create a hierarchy where you give favours to certain people which are disproportionate. Make your decisions behind closed doors. Do not consult freely. Ignore representations and never explain your behaviour or your decisions. Give the impression that rules don't matter. Now, the second way to destroy motivation is actually performance-related pay or external benefits. This is a very good way to kill motivation. The whole banking industry and so much of the private sector is founded on performance-related pay and performance-related benefits. They don't work. And if you want a really good speech on this, have a look at Dan Pink on TED, and we're talking about performance-related pay and motivation. This is what the London School of Economics in a recent study said. They looked at 51 performance-related pay schemes. What we find that financial incentives reduce intrinsic motivation and diminish ethical or other reasons for complying with workplace social norms such as fairness. As a consequence, the provision of incentives can result in a negative impact on overall performance. Here we go again. Instrumental external rewards are not good motivators. They reduce motivation because they undermine basic social impulses of altruism and the common good, which lie at the heart of cooperative behaviour. Rewards make it that you no longer work hard at your job or in your collaborative venture because you think it's worthwhile to do so, but because you love doing it, because you feel you're contributing to a brilliant team effort. Rather, you find yourself driven to achieve someone else's sales target, chasing a pot of gold. Let's bring this to a conclusion with a happy ending, however. Now, I'm here from Audiences Europe Network. Here's an example of a collaboration that has endured for nearly 15 years against the odds, without any money, separated by hundreds of miles, where we all speak different languages and have experienced a changing parade of interesting personalities, some warm and cuddly, some tough as old boots, but we're still here. what is the secret of our success? And this is what I was pondering when I was thinking about this talk now. AEN came into being because a few individuals had the idea that we could learn from each other. Precisely because we come from different backgrounds and speak different languages, we thought that that diversity was a source of enrichment. As people, we knew we liked working together. But above all, we shared a common goal, a vision of a better world in which audiences become the starting point of the arts, not the end point. We had a motivational goal. This was not based on our immediate self-interest or our organisation's interest, but rather was grounded in positive aspirations and hopes, accessibility, social equity, learning, the best for the most. The key thing was that AEN offered no immediate reward to its participants other than being together. Our reward was to see the cultural landscape transformed. In AEN, nobody has competed for resources or glory. People belong to the network, they opt into the network freely, and they attend our events because they believe in the ideal. They're curious and they want to learn. They enjoy being in foreign places, being exposed to novel or foreign ideas, meeting new people, cementing old friendships. And we do this not because it makes us money or gets us a better job or wins us the next round of funding. We do it because it's important. We are driven by a higher purpose. In our own small way, the people in AEN want to build a stronger sense of European identity in the cultural sector and among those strange audience development types like you. That's what we're doing. Now, Robert Louis Stevenson said, to travel hopefully is a better thing than to arrive, and the true success is to labour. So we in Audiences Europe Network, and I think you in Audiences Northern Ireland, are travelling hopefully. We have a mission. We are working towards a better future. This is the secret of our success. The collaborations that are strong and that endure are founded on social impulses. The people within them are motivated by working towards a common good and not by immediate self-interest. They are being altruistic. The point of collaborating is not what's in it for me, but rather what's in it for us. Never lose sight of that. Do not enter into a cooperative venture with the primary goal of benefiting yourself and seeking individual rewards. Rather, enter into it with the idea that improving the common good will ultimately and often spectacularly provide you with your just deserts. As I said at the start, the most successful individuals, as well as the most successful species, are not necessarily the strongest, but the cleverest, the most adaptable, the most resourceful, and the ones that have learned to work together. Putting those desirable traits together, we can build groups that are quick-witted, nimble, creative, and intensely social. We might squabble, but we also know that our prosperity, even our survival, will depend on our willingness to pool resources and work as a team, where we allow individuals to play to their strengths, and above all, where we play fair and by the rules. Together we become more than the sum of the parts. Successful, enduring collaborations are not about solving short-term problems, but are about confronting bigger, important matters that contribute to the stock of good in the world. They are driven by a higher purpose, by an altruistic impulse, by positive emotions and thoughts, and at a very basic level, by warm, interpersonal, trusting relationships. For the want of a more precise word, for all you hard-bitten cultural professionals, let's call that, I don't know, love. Thank you very much.